lingers. Who will lead the party? Today, lawmakers will attempt to answer that question. Right now, House Democrats are in the midst of a marathon vote on Capitol Hill. Nancy Pelosi, the minority leader, is expected to keep her job, but she is facing a challenge from colleagues, including Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan, who say fresh faces are needed to get the party back on track. Our senior political reporter Mnuchin is on Capitol Hill. You spoke to Tim Ryan earlier. What did he say?
Well, he said that the votes for change are in this room. He's very confident that he's going to unseat and defeat Nancy Pelosi today, which would be a monumental upset. And I can tell you, Carol, that nobody...
This is Mnuchin. This is the new pick for Treasury Secretary. Let's listen.
Work with him in the administration. And our number one priority is going to be the economy, get back to 3 to 4% growth. We believe that's very sustainable, and focus on things for the American worker. That's absolutely our priority.
Talk about bringing money back. Explain how that works, how you get corporations like Apple that have billions of dollars.
Sure. Well, I mean, our first priority is going to be the tax plan, and the tax plan has both the corporate aspects to it, lowering corporate taxes so we make U.S. companies the most competitive in the world, making sure we repatriate trillions of dollars back to the United States, and the personal income taxes, where we're going to have the most significant middle income tax cut since Reagan. We're going to incorporate the child care program. So this is going to be a tremendous boon to the economy.
Explain how your experience both in Hollywood and on Wall Street will help you at the Treasury Department.
Well, I'd say
many people say you don't have that government experience that's necessary.
Well, let me first say what I've really been focused on is being a regional banker for the last 8 years, and I know what it takes to make sure that we can make loans to small and mid-market companies, and that's going to be our big focus, making sure we scale back regulation so that we make sure the banks are lending.
Lastly, if you could talk about infrastructure. You'll also be in charge in terms of building roads, building bridges. How will you go about doing that? A lot of Republicans aren't ready to spend the kind of money that Mr. Trump wants to spend.
Well, it's a big priority of this administration. We need to make sure that our infrastructure is built for the 21st century, that we have roads and bridges and power grids and infrastructure that support this country, and that's going to be a big focus. We'll be working with Congress and working with the different departments in the administration to make sure we figure out how to fund it in the most effective way. I think we're going to look at a lot of different things. Some public-private partnerships, different types of things we'll look at, but it's all going to be a big priority. Thank you very much. The carrier deal, I think it's terrific. The president-elect and the vice president picked up the phone and called the CEO of United Technologies and told him we wanted to keep jobs here. Can't remember the last time a president did that, and it's going to be a terrific opportunity. Both myself, Wilbur Ross, who's in Commerce, working with the president, making sure we do the right thing for the American workers. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, we just heard from Steve Mnuchin, who is Trump's pick for the Secretary of the Treasury, and as you heard, he has a lot of big plans coming up for middle-class workers and for also those who run corporations. Let's head back to Capitol Hill and check back in with Mnuchin. I just want to go down this list of what Mnuchin said that he has plans for. He wants to lower the corporate taxes. He wants to slash taxes for all Americans. He wants to institute Ivanka Trump's child care plans. So he has all of these new ideas that frankly sound pretty good to middle-class workers right now. And there are Democrats on Capitol Hill trying to get those very same people back in their corner.
Yeah, it's a very ambitious agenda, one that will require some bipartisan support. I can tell you on a lot of the tax issues, though, they could actually pass a lot of those tax cuts through a budget process that avoids a filibuster in the Senate. That means they could pass these things on a party line vote, and the Republicans are going to have to make a decision on prioritizing whether or not to move forward on a tax bill next year, or try to do something like on Medicare reform, an overhaul of Medicare. One of the big decisions they're going to have to make in order to use that that budget process that can avoid a filibuster, but things that he mentioned about a child care proposal that Ivanka Trump was talking about on the campaign trail, that would require some bipartisan support, but that could also divide Republicans, particularly if you spend a lot of money and things that that Republicans are frankly worried about, driving up the price tag. How do you pay for a lot of these social welfare programs? So it'll be interesting to see the extent to which they can carry it out, but I can tell you that the chances of Mnuchin getting confirmed, which will be the first challenge for him, the chances are very high, even though Democrats are already raising concerns about his time in Wall Street. People like Elizabeth Warren raising concerns about him, but Democrats don't have much power to stop him because they changed the filibuster rules and then allowed that this in 2013, ensuring that any sort of executive level nominee for Donald Trump could be confirmed.
Having said that, Manu, having said that, here's the argument with critics of the Democratic Party. So Nancy Pelosi will probably return to being minority leader, even though younger Democrats are vying for that spot. So, you know, Democrats have no power at all right now. Why won't they push through with some change in leadership?
That's what the argument that Tim Ryan is making. That is Nancy Pelosi's challenger. He said to me on his way into the room right behind me right now where this House Democratic leadership vote is happening, he said the votes for change are in this room. Now, that could be wishful thinking. A lot of people think it is wishful thinking because Nancy Pelosi is someone who has a lot of support within this room, within the room behind me, Carol, so we expect her to win. But if Ryan were to pull off an upset, it'd probably be the biggest upset of the year so far, maybe even bigger than Donald Trump's victory.
All right, Manu Rashu, thank you so much. So let's talk about this some more. Simone Sanders is here. She's a CNN political commentator and former national press secretary for the Bernie Sanders campaign. Patty Solis Doyle is also with me. She's a CNN political commentator and manager of Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign. All right, so Patty, why wouldn't the Democrats be open to a change in leadership? Fresh blood. I mean, obviously something's not working. And I know Nancy Pelosi raises lots and lots of money for Democrats, but let's face it, there aren't many Democrats in office right at the moment. And didn't this past election prove that raising a lot of money doesn't necessarily mean your candidate wins?
Well, look, let me say this. First of all, Nancy Pelosi is the first woman ever to be Speaker of the House, which makes her a historic figure. But more importantly, Nancy Pelosi runs a very, very disciplined caucus. I mean, she is probably the greatest vote counter there is on the Hill.
But Patty, Democrats have no power right now.
No, having said that, though, Carol, totally having said that, though, this past election, the 2016 election, was a brutal wake-up call for all Democrats at all levels. At the D-TRIP, at the DNC, at the DGA, we have to really sort of look at what happened and look at ways to fix it and reach out to all voters. I don't think that Nancy Pelosi is going to lose her job, but I do think that a challenge, if it helps sort of awaken them and look at how they're going to lead moving forward and look for new leadership in terms of the vice chairs, I think it's a good thing. I think a challenge is always a good thing, and I think Nancy Pelosi is going to take it seriously and really sort of look into how she can make some changes.
Well, I don't know if you're challenged, but you still win if you'll look at it seriously, but I'll take you at your word, Patty. Simone, a question for you. So Donald Trump and Mike Pence they go to Indiana. They talk to Carrier. They convince that company to stay to keep some jobs in the United States instead of moving them to Mexico. Why weren't the Democrats doing those sorts of things? Because isn't that something that the Democrats might consider?
Well, I think it's also important to note, Carol, that they also promised Carrier huge corporate tax breaks, and Carrier still moved a number of their jobs.
Well, we don't know that yet.
Well, they've said that that's what they want to do. We just heard the new Secretary of the Treasury, or the potential Secretary of the Treasury, talk about reforming taxes and tax breaks for corporations. So I definitely think that, yeah, Democrats need to be focused on jobs. They need to be focused on jobs for hard-working class people of all backgrounds. I think it's a little unconventional for the President of the United States or the President-elect to pick up the phone and call these companies. But this is, as Patty said, this is a wake-up call for everybody. I'm hesitant to go ahead and praise the President-elect because, again, we don't know the details of the deal. We have to take what the President-elect has told us with a grain of salt. But this is something that we need to be focused on. Absolutely. Jobs for working-class communities, and making sure that when those manufacturing jobs do leave, because a lot of them are not coming back, that there are replacements for those jobs in these communities so folks can learn new skills and continue to work.
Right. So Patty, will we see this as a move away from identity politics on the part of the Democrats? Because that's very much the campaign that Hillary Clinton ran.
Look, I think Democrats need to have an even bigger tent than they already had. Leaving white working class voters on the table was disastrous, as we all know now. But that doesn't mean that we stop talking to all our other folks. I mean, we just have to talk to everybody, and that's how we need to campaign, and we really need to focus on our down ballot races. We need to focus on the governor's races. We can't just save ourselves for every 4 years at the presidential level. So again, like I said, this was a huge, brutal wake-up call, and we're taking steps to fix it.
Maybe, Simone, the answer is to have more Democrats move to the middle part of the country, because they all seem to live on the two coasts, right?
Well, I'm from Nebraska, so I'm from that middle part of the country everybody keeps talking about. My mama still lives there. I think the answer really is to connect the plight of the people in McDowell County, West Virginia, for example, with the plight of people in Chicago, Illinois. I think the rhetoric of this general election campaign has made us feel like the people in those areas have two separate issues, but that we really have more in common than that divides us. So it's really about, I mean, and Jesse, there's an article in Slate by Jamel Bowie that talks about this, about taking a page out of Jesse Jackson's book and noting and connecting that we are all part of this quilt, and the black worker, the white worker, the person that cares about immigration rights, the person that's fighting for, clean water in their community, whether it's in Cannonball or Flint, it's all connected, and we need all patches of that quilt to be able to move our agenda forward. That is where the party goes from here, not tossing out quote-unquote identity politics altogether.
All right, I have to leave it there. Simone Sanders, Patty Solis-Doyle, thanks so much. Coming up in the newsroom, you're welcome. Donald Trump says he's out, vowing to pass the business over to his children. But will that take care of his many, many conflicts of interest?